Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about seed plants and some of the ways that they can reproduce. Now, one of the main ways we're going to talk about today is reproduction by forming seeds. And from that, we'll be able to also look at some of the basic stages of a seed plant's life cycle, starting from that seed. So to get started, let's take a trip outside. Now, if you're going to go outside for a walk, you're likely to find a whole bunch of these yellow flowers all over the place. And yes, I'm talking about dandelions. Now, the ones that we see oftentimes will look kind of like this white color. Now, when we look at these, we know, if I blow on this, a bunch of stuff is going to fly off of it. Well, what is that stuff? Well, it's just the seeds. So if I open it up, you'll see that I can actually pull out individual seeds. Now, what's really special about these seeds is that white fuzzy part on top. Now, that's actually called a papillus. And the papillus is what allows these little dandelion seeds to get picked up by the wind to float somewhere else. And this is the first stage of a seed plant's life, obviously, is as a seed. Now, once that seed actually lands, it'll start to grow. And as we can see here, it'll start to form like this, where we can see these leaves starting to come out. And they'll oftentimes come out, we can see another example right here, they kind of come out in this rosette shape. So they come out in, kind of a circular form, right? We've got one over here, right, as they form a circle. Now, if we think about this, we see that leaves are coming out before the flower. Well, why might that be? Why would the leaves come out before the flower does? Well, what do leaves do? Leaves are important for photosynthesis. So why send the flower out before we're able to, build these huge panels that are able to catch all that solar energy to turn it into glucose? So that's why leaves start to come out first. And this brings us to our next stage of a seed plant's life, which is called a seedling. Now, the last stage is the stage that we're most familiar with, which is obviously the adult stage. And here I can see I've got a whole bunch of adult dandelions. Now, if you look super closely, you can actually see some of the main reproductive structures, right? We can see a whole bunch of little stamen, right, which includes the filament and the anther. And in the center, we can see that there's a stigma. Now, dandelions are really good at producing seeds asexually, which means that they can take pollen from their own plant and use that to fertilize their own ovules. And what will happen is once they do that, these will all close up, which you've seen before. It'll form those seeds and then open back up to look like that old white version where all the seeds are able to blow away to start the process all over again. Now, as I just talked about with the dandelion example outside, we see that many seed plants are able to reproduce by forming seeds either sexually or asexually. The reason they're able to do this is because each seed plant within that plant contains both male parts, which is our stamen, which includes the filament and the anther, which holds the pollen, as well as the female parts, which includes the ovules contained within the ovary, as well as the style and stigma. Now, the goal of reproduction to form seeds is to move the pollen that is in those anthers to the stigma so that the pollen can travel down and fertilize the ovule. Once that fertilization occurs, that's when the seed forms. Now, obviously, this little example I have here, right, although it's cute, isn't going to show us these structures very well. So instead I have an example, which still isn't quite real. We have a fake plant, but it is a good example because it shows all of these main parts. Now, if we look within these petals, obviously in the center of our plant, we can see most of those main structures. So here you can see we have these sticks, all these sticks that are coming out around that main center part. And all of these sticks, these are the stamen, right? We have the filament with the anthers on top, and those anthers are what contain the pollen. In the center here, we have the stigma on top, which we can travel down into the ovary inside, which has the ovules contained within it. Now, the goal, like we said, of reproduction is to move the pollen from the anthers to the stigma. Now, if it's happening on the same plant, that's called asexual reproduction. But if it's happening between two different plants, let's say we move the pollen from one plant to the stigma of another in order to fertilize those ovules, that's sexual reproduction. And that is oftentimes more beneficial because it aids in increasing diversity. Now, how does that pollen get from the anthers to the stigma in order to fertilize the ovules inside the ovary? Well, we're going to take a look at that, but I figure it would be more interesting if we take a little trip into this book. This is Fred, the bee. He's off looking for nectar to make honey back at the hive. Ah, here's a flower. Fred's gonna fly in and start to suck up the nectar to soar inside of him until he gets back to the hive. But when he lands in the flower, he accidentally bumps up against the structures inside, including the stamen. The stamen includes the anther of the flower, which holds the pollen. As Fred bumbles around in the flower, the pollen starts to shake out. Some of it even lands on Fred. Now Fred has finished getting the nectar he wanted here, so he leaves to find another flower. When he gets there, he happily slurps up more nectar while also dropping off the pollen that happened to stick to him. The pollen sticks to the stigma and travels down into the ovary to fertilize an ovule. Now this flower is happy because it has been fertilized, and Fred is happy because he can feed his family. Thanks, Fred. Now, once that fertilization occurs, the seed will start to form. And in many cases, what will actually happen is there will be some kind of fruit body which will grow around those seeds. Now, there's a number of reasons why a fruit body like that will grow around the seed, but one of the main reasons is in order to attract animals like you and I. Now, most animals, not only are they attracted to the beautiful colors that fruits are, they love the sweet, sweet taste. And not only do they love the sweet taste, but it's actually quite good for them. What will happen is when an animal finds that fruit and it eats it for the great nutrients and energy that it offers, it usually won't digest the seeds. Oftentimes, what will happen is it won't even eat the seeds in the first place. And so whether it leaves the seeds or eats the seeds and they don't digest and it comes out in their fecal matter, those seeds are left on the ground. And who's that great for? Well, it's great for those seeds in order to be able to grow into plants themselves. Once they're left and sitting on the ground, as long as they are able to reach into the soil, get the nutrients that they need, get the sunlight, the water that they need, they're able to grow into another plant. Now that's everything that we're going to talk about today when it comes to reproduction to form seeds. Make sure that as you've gone through this video, you've taken note of all of the key terms as well as their definition. See you next time.